Hello.
Hello.
I think we're live.
Wonderful. We're live, little man.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to today's afternoon tea. And I'm excited to be joined by Amrou Al-Kadhi and their dog. What's the name of your dog?
His name is Phaedra.
Phaedra. This is very exciting. It's the first dog we've had on our afternoon tea session.
Oh, he's such an attention seeker, so we'll be really happy. I think he's just looking at his own image.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. So I'm Carlotta Eden. I'm part of the communications team here at the Society of Authors. And just running through a few housekeeping bits first. For those of you who don't know, this is a free event as part of our second SOA at Home Festival, running until December. And all our afternoon tea sessions are free. But if you can afford to donate a few pounds to the Authors Contingency Fund to support authors in financial difficulty due to the health crisis, we'll pop a link at the top of the chat window over on the right. I think it's that way or that way. And we also have a virtual Blackwell store where you can buy books by authors who've been featured in the SOA at Home Festival, including Amrou. So the link for that will appear in the chat now and at the end of the session too. So this session will be 45 minutes long. If at any time you do experience any connection difficulties, you can just press the red reconnect button, which should be at the top. So I will start with a brief introduction about Amrou, and then we will get right into it with a few questions before I hand over to questions from the audience. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat as we go, and we will get to them at the end and try to answer as many as we can. So to introduce Amrou, Amrou Al-Kadhi is the author of Life as a Unicorn, a brilliant and eye-opening memoir that I gobbled up, and co-wrote the finale for Kumail Nanjiani and Emily V. Gordon's series for Apple Little America, as well as an episode for BBC America's hotly anticipated series, The Watch. Amrou also has several TV projects in development with BBC Drama, ABX and FX Productions, and NBC Universal. So it sounds like you're quite busy, Amrou.
I am quite busy. I mean, it's weird. In terms of work, it was a lot of stuff kind of got put on pause at the start of lockdown, but a lot of TV commissioners are kind of thinking about, in the post-pandemic world, what kind of content will people be wanting to make? And I suppose with, I'm going to just put my dog down because he's going.
That's fine. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I thinking a lot about kind of the post-pandemic world and what kind of content people are going to want from that. And so obviously TV has a lag of, if you pitch something now, probably won't be on your screens for at least 2 years kind of thing. And so in that sense, the lockdown has been an okay time to start thinking about projects for the future. But at the same time, it's quite hard to think about the future because it's all just so uncertain, and it's quite hard, I'm finding, to feel that sense of like pure optimism. When you're writing a script, you want to feel like, yeah, but at the moment it's unclear. So yeah, I mean, I am a workaholic. I work 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. I don't know why. It makes, I mean, I write about it a little bit in the book, but I've always been a workaholic, really. It helps me compensate for a lot of anxieties I have.
I think it's quite exciting to have different projects on the go. I think, especially if you do feel like you are a workaholic, it's quite an exciting thing. And you're in a situation now that no one's ever been in before, where you're trying to create art in a pandemic.
Well, I mean, the thing is with TV, what's quite different to writing a book or to writing a TV script or a film script or whatever is that, when someone buys your book or buys the rights to your book or whatever, it for sure, so I'm just going to turn that off, it for sure will get sold. It will get out there, as in you write the book and you've got your deal with the publisher and it's going to come out. Where I suppose with TV, it's so hypothetical. like you develop loads of stuff. I mean, the success rate is, you know, probably 1 in every 10 scripts that have been bought from a broadcaster will even make it to pilot stage kind of thing. And so, you know, I've had many scripts that haven't made it to production, and I have had some too. So you kind of have to, I think, have 5 or 6 on the go to have the chance of even one taking.
Yeah. And can I ask, because you do have so many projects on the go, what draws you to these different forms of writing? Obviously, you've got script writing, you've got your journalism as well. I mean, what is it particularly about the script writing that you really enjoy?
I suppose, I mean, maybe we'll talk about like the difference between like writing a book and like writing a screenplay. I suppose what I find really magical about filmmaking or a screenplay is that you're not technically just writing something that's going to be received or read in the way that it was written. I mean, no viewer reads the screenplay really. You write the screenplay, and then a director comes on board, and these actors come and make it alive. And as like a queer person and someone who's always believed in, you know, multiplicity and collaboration, you know, I think that's where you get the best work, is where you have people constantly challenging ideas. What I love about writing for TV is you need so many voices in order to push the project, you know, onto your screen. And I like the amount of creative collaboration. Also, so is it really echoey just for me, or is it echoey for you as well?
I think it's fine. There's a tiny bit of an echo, but it's not too bad, actually. Right. Yeah. But if anyone does have any problems, just write in the chat and we'll figure out.
So I love that. And also I think in terms of smuggling in politics or characters that I'm really think that the masses need to know about, I think TV is probably the best medium in terms of getting into the homes of people who might not go and pick up your book in a way. It's a slightly different kind of chess game where I suppose with TV, I mean, I used to write for Hollyoaks, you know, and when you're writing for TV, you have to adhere to a certain formula to get it on TV. Whereas with a book or whatever, you just write it how you want to write it. So in a way, writing a book felt freer in a sense.
Yeah. So I was introduced to you on social media via other writers earlier this year who were all praising your memoir, Life as a Unicorn. Then, of course, you won a Somerset Morn Award at our SOA Awards in June.
Oh, thank you for that.
How did that feel? Yeah, congratulations again. How did that feel? Especially, I think we were at the height of lockdown still at that point.
I mean, my God, it was such a welcome sort of surprise, and just made me, you know, there's so many books that come out every year, and you know, you write a book, it comes out, and then like 2 days later another book comes out and you're like, oh, will anyone ever read this? And so it was an incredible honor in that way, for, you know, an institution like yourself to really, I think people, especially with memoirs, think, is this just sort of a kind of chronological autobiography? You know, a lot of people don't maybe approach it as literary, whereas when I was talking to my publishers and selling this book, I really did want it to be a kind of novelistic literary book, and not sort of, and then this happened, and then this happened, but kind of trying to stage through the writing what it feels like to have so many conflicting identities, in a kind of literary way. And so the fact that it received an award, you know, on a literary merit was really, really kind of validating, I think.
That's good. And I think you definitely managed to achieve that as well, I have to say. So I was hoping that you might be able to give us a little tour of your workspace and also tell us where you are at the moment. Are you in your flat or?
I'm in a little one-bedroom house, actually. It's a tiny in Camberwell, which has actually been not a bad place to self-isolate and all that, because it's a very green area and there's loads of parks for my dogs. Let me show you around. I mean, it's just me living here, but I've had to kind of, so my living room is also my office space, because
Nice.
so if we do it from coming in from the door.
Oh, this is a proper tour. I love it.
I'm very into orange and teals, and then there is my desk.
Nice.
And that's where I do all my writing. If I want to do some reading or kind of research, I'll use one of these chairs.
I love them.
And then that's really it. And then that's where I make all my endless coffee. And that's about it, really.
Do you have like a writing routine? Do you kind of write better in the morning or afternoon, or what? When do you like to write best?
To be honest, I do try and write at set times, but there are just some times where you're just staring at your computer screen, you're just procrastinating, and then all of a sudden at a really random time, you're like, oh wow, I've just written for a couple of hours. For me, I do try and I'm so happy I have a dog, because you know, at 8 in the morning, 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. I do a walk with him. The 1 p.m. is like the longest one. And so no matter what, or how kind of pressing a deadline is, or how stressed work is, I just sort of have to go out at those times so he can exercise, which means that those windows in between those times, so usually at like, you know, between about 11 and 1 and between about 3 and 6, I can be quite focused and I'll write. If I'm behind, I will probably work after dinner or an episode of Desperate Housewives between 8 to 10 p.m. I try and read after 10 p.m. Or watch stuff, because I definitely feel that if I'm not reading or watching stuff, my writing, you know, you need to always remember the joy of reading and the joy of watching. And I think a lot of writers can actually forget that, because so I try, you know, between about 10 and midnight to, you know, have a long bath and read something or whatever.
I like that. That's good. And I think the lesson there is that all writers should have dogs.
Yeah. Well,
to get them out.
I mean, I know some people are, I mean, I'm allergic, but he's hypoallergenic, so it's completely fine.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, yes, I think I have heard that with those dogs, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah. A lot of the kind of poodle crosses. But, you know, I think going out, I've got a little garden outside as well. I've definitely found, also, I think there's a lot of news at the moment and it's all quite terrifying. And I have an impulse to get up, go to my phone and press a podcast whilst I go for my walk. And I've now found that I try not to take my phone out during my walks and just almost not think about anything and just, you know, basically play fetch or just walk. And I was worried I'd find it quite boring, but actually I think part of the reason that I was not maybe able to write that well at the start of the pandemic was just constantly listening to the news in the morning, night, and you know what's happening in America. I mean, we obviously all need to consume the news and know, but it's okay not to wake up and play the news, which is what I used to do. And now, usually around lunchtime, I'll watch the news while I'm eating, and I'll be like, okay, I get what's going on, but definitely having outdoor time that's very relaxing, I found is really helpful.
That's really good, and quite important as well to set yourself boundaries, particularly with everything that's going on. So do you have a notebook for write? I mean, do you write by hand or on computer? Do you have a separate notebook as well for writing scripts?
Yes, I do actually.
Oh, cool.
I use these. It's me being a bit bougie, but I use these Christian Lacroix notebooks, which are about 15 quid.
Beautiful.
But I think if they're really sort of disposable notebooks. I won't write neatly in them because they're just like scraps of paper. So I kind of need a nice notebook in order to like write with respect so that I can read that.
Interesting.
So yeah, so I write planning stuff in there, and then
Nice.
notes from meetings that I look back. But before I write, I do really like to plan. I mean, you particularly have to with a screenplay because, you know, there's a set number of locations and you know, there's a budget and
Yeah.
there's that kind of stuff. But yeah, and the screenwriting document, final draft, you know, it isn't the funnest place to just ramble because it's a really formal kind of document. Whereas like writing a book or whatever, I will allow myself to just have a Word document, just write, you know, a few thousand words and see what happens. You can move it around so much easier.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. You mentioned in another interview once that your memoir started out as a collection of essays. I think that's right in saying. Can you tell us a bit about that and how you got from essays to full-blown memoir?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I initially was talking to my book agent about this, I had been writing for a while for The Independent, and I still regularly do write for them and The Guardian, but I was doing it for 2 years. I did a fortnightly opinion piece, basically. That was like basically every 2 weeks, kind of 600 words on a hot topic or whatever. And at first that was fine. And I really enjoyed the platform and being able to talk about things that were important to me and that I thought the world needed to know and that kind of stuff. But what I found tended to happen is like one of the only, you know, people of color really writing. It was it was a very white writing team there. I was constantly sort of coming in to write 600 words about this awful racist incident that's happened, or 600 words about how awful transphobia is. And very important to write about those things.
Yeah.
But I slightly started to lose the joy, I guess, of writing because it was always reactive and always imbued in a polemic that was caught up in myself. So being like, well, as a brown person, this is why racism is bad or whatever. And so I was like, I kind of want to write a collection of essays about things that are important to me. So, you know, the relationship between drag and Islam, and I'll use my experience, but I'll broaden it out. Or the relationship between marine biology and gender, which is a big part of the memoir anyway, or you know, the relationship between mothers and queerness and that kind of stuff. So it was more like that. And then my agent was like, your half of this is really well written and half of this has still got the shadow of your time as at the Independent, where you're writing slightly objectively about your own experiences. And he was like, what you'll probably be able to, well, he and she were like, I now have one brick agent, Millie, who's amazing, but there is another one on the team.
Okay, yeah.
But I remember being like, you'll achieve what you're trying to show in your argument by getting rid of it as an argument as such and just writing it as a memoir, which I was a little bit reluctant to at first because I was like, well, who cares about my life or who cares about what I have to say? But actually, to be able to just write about my experiences and bring the reader into them really directly, through getting rid of any kind of argument or objective, I think actually made the arguments come out through empathy a little bit more. So I think that was the decision, was by writing it as well, here's just my experience. I'm going to get rid of any of the politics or the social issues around this. And here is just how it feels from, then actually that would achieve what I felt that I wasn't able to do at the independent a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's interesting. Actually, that an interesting thing for your agent to suggest, because it can be at first quite a tough thing to hear, but in the end, I think the whole narrative works well in pulling the reader into your life, I suppose, as a narrative. You touched on it just a bit then, but you do write in your memoir that drag was a way for you to stay close to the Middle East and a way for you to connect with Islam. Is that still the case for you with drag? And have you missed performing?
yeah, I mean, definitely, like, you know, drag is almost like, you know, maybe like a cartoonist or an animation person uses their cartoons or animations to live out certain fantasies or explore ideas that they can't, you know, in the real world. I think drag does that for yourself, because you essentially create, I mean, using your own body and using makeup and wigs and costume and all of that, you create something that maybe you feel was inside you or you weren't allowed to do. And definitely drag, without giving too much away from the book, but drag became a way to, you know, because I really had quite a decisive sort of severing from my family and my culture and all of that. But it was a way to start going, almost fantasizing about the women who I kind of idealized growing up and dressing up as them. So it was, you know, drag in a way has been a vehicle for me to explore my Arab heritage and my faith in a way that feels safe for me, and it's in a kind of fantasy realm, and it's put me back in touch with it. And definitely drag is also, it's just weird. Like, I'm actually quite shy, you know, if I was to go on a date or whatever, I get quite shy, but I'm often surprised by how far I'll go when I'm in drag and on stage, like the limits that I'll push the audience to or myself to. I'm often just like, what am I allowing myself to, you know, I mean, the other day I, you know, had like actually I probably shouldn't say, but you know, and that sense of release and of has been sorely missing. I was lucky enough during in September for a couple of nights, I was able to do my show from Quran to Queen at the Phoenix Arts Club, and it was amazing. It was just such an amazing feeling, because one thing that I definitely get from drag that I don't get anywhere else, whether writing or wherever, is feeling completely present and in the moment when you're performing in drag, because it's like you have to be so connected to yourself in order to do a live performance and to be in the moment. And also the audience is sort of trusting you because you've built this world when you're in drag. You've said, this is who I am now, you need to believe it. So I desperately worried about live arts, actually, and for a lot of particularly queer live artists who get a lot of kind of mental health benefits from being in a room with other queer people and performing and exploring things and not having that outlet, I do think is going to have some quite massive repercussions.
Yeah, I think so too, actually. What do you think creatives in general can do right now to support the arts? I mean, there's so much uncertainty around it, but what do you think sort of creatives can do at the moment?
Well, I think there's like a few things, like something that, you know, let's say if you're a singer or you know, singing is part of your act, you know, I've definitely, you know, met up with my pianist and just had a jam just to keep the kind of muscle going.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I personally love improv. I've not done this yet, but just doing like a an improvised show with a few friends, and you may not have the audience or whatever, but being able to just keep doing those things. For me, being in drag personally doesn't work as well on Zoom, just because for me, I will get in drag at home, but I just really need to be connected to the room. But I think what creatives all around can do is just make sure that if, I know money's tight for a lot of people at the moment, but if you have any resources, helping support any live art fund, and then as soon as it's safe to start going again. And because I really do think, like, live artists, not only do some of the most exciting talents come out of the live arts, like, they inspire basically every comedy show that you like on the BBC, and they inspire most screenwriters, will definitely borrow something that they see on stage, and authors, and I think and also it's just an amazing way to be connected to people. And I think we're in what I find kind of amazing about performing, and my show is sort of, political, with a small p, in the fact that it's, the whole show is a rom-com basically between me and Allah, who's my ex-boyfriend, and I'm trying to get back with him. And it's, but what's often amazing is, Muslim or not, Arab or not, once the entire room is laughing at the same joke or is connected to the song, suddenly all those like things that divide us tend to go away. And that's why gigs are so amazing, because like you can be, at a Gaga concert and the person to the right of you voted conservative or whatever, but for a second everyone's just connected, and like we're missing that so much in our kind of social fracturing online, that I think people are saying, like, what's this post-pandemic world going to be like? But I just don't think it'll be that pleasant without live performance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, definitely. And what's keeping you going at the moment? Like, it's obviously so precarious for so many people, but especially for writers and those in the arts. How are you trying to kind of stay sane and grounded right now?
I have to confess that I'm lucky in that I've very thankfully been able to get some script commissions. It was tricky at the beginning, but I'm very blessed and lucky to have that at the moment. So that is keeping me going personally, in having some money and time to write, though writing is a bit of a challenge at the moment, just because like the brain fog from just the sort of anxiety of the news and the anxiety of the future is really, really difficult. I'm just trying not to have put too much pressure on myself, and if I can't write for a day, then it's not my fault, that there's a pandemic and that it's just a bit too exhausting. I call my friends a lot, more so than I used to, for just proper catches, and it's actually been quite nice. Like I used, so often back in the day, we would always catch up about work. What are you up to? What are you up to? And that's slightly dissolved at the moment. I don't have that much work news. I mean, I'm writing some scripts that I'm enjoying, but there's nothing really like actively happening right now. So that, like, it's actually been really nice to just catch up with friends and just laugh and just do a lot more of that, which I think is really important. I went to Chingford, which is, really far away from where I live, just to meet a friend for lunch the other day. And I usually wouldn't do that, because I'd be like, oh God, that takes up a lot of my day. And that was such a lovely day and nothing was achieved, and that was fine. So I think letting go of some of that. And I think if you have the creative space, I think I definitely feel like the stuff that I'm writing now is much more unapologetically just what I want to write. And I don't want to waste my time now writing stuff that I don't particularly feel is going to be enjoyable to write, or also really that important to watch. So, I think, like, time is limited, the world is on fire. Like, if you're going to write something that you want to write and, you know, give a shit.
That's good advice. Thank you very much. We have a few questions in the chat, but first of all, I was going to ask if you'd be happy to do a short read from your memoir, Life as a Unicorn.
Here it is, Life as a Unicorn, in paperback, which I know is a lot easier to buy.
I think I still have the gorgeous hardback cover as well, which was also beautiful.
Thank you. Let me get out a bit. Oh, here we go. My mother's behavior at Arab weddings would make the perfect audition video for RuPaul's Drag Race. The next one we attended together only confirmed her as the clear genetic foundation for my drag career. It was a cousin's wedding, and this time it was happening in Mykonos in Greece. The wedding took place over 3 days, the first of which was a tropical-themed party. The 3-event itinerary meant that my mother was strategizing months in advance. The trip more an opportunity to present a hat trick of award season red carpet ensembles than to actually celebrate the happy couple. Mama decided she needed a tropical-themed headpiece to give her first place at Party 1, but was struggling to find designers who could create one in the way that she had envisaged for her outfit. This is when she called me. Amrou, I was wondering, do you know where I can get a hat with fruits and plants on it for the wedding? Yes, obviously. I basically sleep in such attire. I didn't say that out loud, by the way. That's what I was thinking. Now, the only thing I had ever heard my mother say about my drag was that it was the root of all her unhappiness. Other than that, she pretended it didn't exist, and we never spoke about denim or what I was up to. That's my drag troupe, denim, not denim jeans. I knew that she'd never come to a drag show or publicly show any support for it. But her calling me to ask if I knew any milliners with a flourish for the Copacabana, well, I interpreted this as some kind of silent acceptance. Why, yes, Mother, I do. I have a friend who specializes in such things. Do you want me to take you to her studio? Okay, why not? With the espionage tactics of one of Charlie's angels, I called my friend, telling her that I would be bringing my mother to her studio, but that all conversations about drag were strictly prohibited, and that the fact that she had worked with denim in the past could not be brought up. I dressed in what was probably the dullest ensemble she had ever seen me in, and took Mama to her studio, a magical Narnia of hats bedecked with neon signs, Barbie dolls, and many other fabulous additions. The miller and I acted like faint acquaintances, and I pretended that I was seeing these hats for the first time ever, when, in fact, I had already humped the floor on many of them. Watching my mother try on hats that I had only recently performed in was very disorientating. It felt like a scene from an Almodovar film, where many different layers of performance were occurring simultaneously. My mother, walking around the studio, was someone who I effectively impersonated on stage, wearing the same hats that she was now trying on. And she right now was like a version of Glamroom, but in real life, with all of this left unsaid in an entangled merging of realities. Very quantum. Mama eventually selected a leopard print hat that had a huge tropical leaf towering above it like a skyscraper, and which had to be placed in a box as big as a human adult. To save money, we booked our flights on EasyJet, even though the absurd hat cost more than our return flights. Mama hadn't got the memo that EasyJet didn't offer first-class service, and she arrived at the airport with a different suitcase for each separate outfit. The foliage-scented hat had its own altogether. So, when it was time to check in, Mama was utterly baffled that she was being charged through the roof for all the extra baggage. With no respect for the British passengers all grumbling in the queue behind her, Mama threw a gloriously melodramatic drop that made me want to get my popcorn out. The engrossing heroine monologue ended with Mama shouting, at full volume and with her arm raised in the air like a barrister going in for the kill. "This is not EasyJet. This is difficult jet." At this, she got a round of applause from everyone waiting behind her, and the faintest hint of a smile creased her lips. What a queen.
I love it. Thank you so much. That was actually one of my favourite scenes in the book.
Oh, thanks. I like reading that bit.
It's really funny.
Oh,
so a couple of questions coming in through the chat. So one is actually from Catherine Black, who says that it's very interesting to hear you talk about how much you get out of the suspension of disbelief with drag and the fantasy of it. Do you write fiction, as in novels, rather than for TV or as well as TV? Or would you want to do that, for instance, for a similar outlet?
Yeah, definitely I do. I mean, in a way, like Life is a Unicorn, it's like I had to get it out of my body and resolve so much of the trauma and so much of just the madness of what happened in my childhood and all that before going to a novel or whatever, it's like I had to get it out of me so that I could deal with it and think about it. And, you know, I definitely feel cleansed having written it. And I definitely, and I also think, you know, part of the reason of writing that memoir as well is that lives, like Arab lives or gay Arab lives or Muslim lives, are often written about in the news. And I thought it was really important to write a first-person account of my experience, our experiences, and claim the narrative back and say, well, this is what it's actually like, because people have all their own ideas, and the media does something, you know, it can really distort that. And so I definitely think, you know, all the fictional screenplays that I'm writing or whatever, it is a similar space to drag, of creating a world that allows me to say what I actually want to say, but I can't in the real world.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking about a novel next. Novels is slightly, you know, because with a non-fiction book, you can sell a proposal, which is a very extensive proposal, and use the advance to take some time off work, basically, to write it. Whereas a novel, you have to sort of sell once you've written, which means that it's slightly harder to find the time. So I definitely am planning one next year, but I won't say what it's about yet.
How exciting, though. So another question here from Angela Little, who says that it was very brave of you to write your own story and lay yourself so bare. Were you not tempted to use a ghostwriter at all?
A ghostwriter? No. I mean, thank you firstly for that, for saying that. In a way, I think it just had to be my voice, and it had to be as first-hand an experience as possible. And also, my work is quite exposing in terms of, like, I am quite open about what I think and stuff, and because I'm operating in a public sphere more and more in my life, in a way, being able to just do it directly from me and just be all true, and, you know, there you go, that's the truth of it. And I think when we read memoirs, and the reason they are popular is that we desperately, I personally think they really, you know, I think autobiographies can be ghostwritten, but memoirs, which are it's really about your, you know, it's not a kind of chronology. It's a sort of, I personally, it was very hard to write, for sure, and it was hard to relive a lot of difficult experiences. But I do think the fact that maybe that I've been so honest about them will hopefully readers who pick it up and see their own experience in some of those things. I'm happy that by exposing myself so much that other people can connect to it, hopefully. I mean, maybe nobody does, but that's the hope.
That's not true. No, I agree. I think like you say, it's personal and it's for a reason. And it was important to get your story out there. So I have another question from Kate Jones, who actually sent one in before the chat, which is all about social media and what aspects of social media do you like, and do you think it's a good way for authors to stay connected or spread the word about their work?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm actually currently really rethinking social media in my life because I get a lot of hate just by transphobes or racists and all that stuff, and it's exhausting. And I don't think Twitter is a good place to have a discourse or a conversation, because I think it ultimately becomes a culture war, because you have to distill sometimes quite complex ideas into 120 characters or whatever, and then you become quite entrenched online. And I'm also, something I was discussing with some friends the other day, this idea of that I think we're getting into a problem of filmmakers, screenwriters, authors, whatever. What they're writing is not necessarily what they think or what their opinion is. Like, not on Twitter, as in their books. Like, I'm writing a drama for the BBC at the moment, which is very dark and very not what I want for the world. And it's funny, I think, but it's not what I think particularly is my opinion on things. It's just right, and so, but I think a lot of the time currently, there's, I think it's called, the way that we talk about it is called like puritanical literalism, of believing that whatever you've read on the page or whatever you've watched on screen is what the author wants or thinks, and that's not necessarily the case. And I do think artists should be able to, and even in my drag, like, I might say something which is meant to challenge someone, but it's not like my base opinion about something. And so and more and more I'm trying to do well as an artist. I'm trying to make that separation a bit more clear, because I do think good shows or good whatever pieces of art should be a place to reflect on things, and it's not just, well, this is what the author thinks is the world. And I think social media can get us into that a little bit. So I'm very much up for raising awareness for a cause, let's say, or here's something of my work, or here is an actual opinion, but I'm not really that engaged with it as a space for creativity at all.
No, I think you need to protect yourself a little bit with that as well. It's not a place, Twitter is not a place for nuance.
Exactly. And whenever I do a video, like, and it goes, gets a lot of views, it's just so much vitriol comes my way, and so I just don't really want to be thinking about that. No. I want to write work that's really challenging, and that is, says stuff in a way that maybe is provocative, but I want to feel confident to do that. And sometimes, sometimes I've got into the habit of thinking, oh, I can't write that because I'll get so much shit on social media, and I'm trying to pull away from that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. Well, thank you so much. We've actually just got a couple of minutes left, but I just wanted, because you mentioned that reading was quite a good way for you to stay grounded and creative. Do you have any nice reading recommendations for us before we go?
Reading recommendations. Well, yeah, let me just get a couple of them out. I just finished The Vanishing Half, which was very good.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I just read The Proof of Nikesh Shukla's Brown Baby, which was
fantastic, really
moving and beautiful and just life affirming. I'd like to do a shout out also to A Dutiful Boy. The Memoir of a Gay Muslim's Journey to Acceptance. Mohsin Zaidi, who is another queer Muslim writing a memoir, but it's very different and really spoke to me in different and surprising ways, and I would really recommend that as well. Beautifully written. And yes, and I'm reading a book also called Unknown Language by Hugh Lemmy, who's one of my favorite writers, and that's very mystical and really fun to read at night, I have to say.
That's lovely. Thank you so much. Well, yeah, thank you. I think we've reached the end, I'm afraid, which is a shame. I really would love to ask you so many more questions.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for the
Thank you so much. It's been really fun to talk to you.
Oh, cheers. All right, well, thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thank you. I'll just quickly say, just to finish, that to thank you to everyone today for tuning in and asking questions. And obviously just to remind everyone that all our afternoon tea sessions are free, but if you can afford to donate a few pounds to the Authors Contingency Fund, you can find a link in the chat. And our next afternoon tea is next week with Antonia Fraser on the 22nd of October. So to book that, just head to societyofauthors.org/events. And the recordings for most of our events will be available on our Vimeo and YouTube channels. And lastly, you can find Amrou's memoir in our Blackwell's virtual store, which will also appear in the link in the chat. But you can find all of these links as well on our social media. And yeah, feel free to continue the conversation on Twitter. But for now, we will say goodbye. And thank you so much, Amrou. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bye. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. And you. Bye-bye.
Bye.